That is awful. Oh my god. That is horrendous. That's actually just giving me a complex. How difficult is it, guys? No, it doesn't.
Okay, so digital polarization is a really, really important aspect of how digital economy and digital society has operated. These radiators, nice. Jaron Lanier's point about this is a fundamentally important one. What Lanier argues is we're in an economic system now which isn't embracing capitalism. In fact, we've gone back to pre-capitalist times. Before we had industrial capitalism, society operated fundamentally on what we call a feudalist system. You had an aristocracy that owned everything, and you had other people, peasants, serfs, whatever you want to call them, who owned ostensibly nothing. And the economic system of the 21st century mimics that feudalist system. We've given up on capitalism and gone back to feudalism. You have a few who are in ownership of all systems, and they are very few in number, and everyone else is using their systems and ostensibly being farmed. We are not just the digital oil, we're ostensibly cattle in a giant farm being used for our data. So instead of cows being milked, we are people being milked for data. We have no chance of owning the system whatsoever. We have no chance of getting away from the system. Because even if we do delete our accounts, the system still will accumulate all that information, because there is no way you can get away from using digital technology in the contemporary society. It can't be done. You will not get anything ever done if you don't engage with digital technology. So ubiquitous is this. So we are farmed, and then companies like Meta organize our data for their clients, which is not just companies that want to sell us things, but is also political organizations, political parties, political leaders, social leaders, who want to nudge us to do certain things, who want to influence us. Now, in a sense, that's not really that different from the 20th century in terms of the politics. That was the whole purpose of ideological control in the 20th century, and in the Marxist system that we looked at last week, was to control the ideology of people in societies. Where the power is much more so here is that we have this fine-grained information about individuals. So instead of advertising to the masses, you can now target the individual on their own and manipulate them on a basic, fundamental level. That wasn't possible in the media of the 20th century. That wasn't possible in the broadcast or mass media era. Instead, you threw out messages and hoped they stuck with some people. If they were successful, a lot of people would be persuaded by those messages. Equally so, you would have times where not many people would be persuaded. Now, you have almost a perfect system, where you don't need to appeal to everyone. You can appeal to one and change them on a basic level. And if you change enough ones, you can get what you want. And this is the system in which we operate in. And people ask me why I'm so cynical. I've been teaching this for 15 years. You'd be cynical too. Now, as we saw in the last lecture, the role of the media in the past has been to control and harness audience power to produce a commodity. Dallas Smythe's notion of the audience commodity itself. It's about controlling and keeping an audience over time so that audience can be sold to advertisers. We do the work for media companies. In the digital era, advertisers, in effect, buy attention. They're not buying an audience anymore. They're not buying a big block of people. They are buying your attention. They are fundamentally buying a cognitive state of being. What we pay attention to. So the fundamental metric in the digital society is measuring our attention. What do we pay attention to? That's weird. How do they do that? When you next open Instagram, I want you to realize something. Instagram is measuring exactly what you look at. It is doing this in two ways. It assesses what position an image takes on the screen. There are optimum positions for attention as they sit on a smartphone screen. So Instagram knows if you move an image into that position, you are interested by it. It then measures how long you spend looking at that image and how long you spend with the text that accompanies the image. It does this for every single interaction that you have with images on the platform. This is how Instagram measures attention. TikTok has it much easier. TikTok can basically say how long does it take for you to swipe on to the next video. It's a little bit easier with TikTok. TikTok in many ways has perfected all of these systems. That attention is then sold by others, not sold by you, even though you're the one who's doing the work. You're not selling it. You're not getting any money for it. You're getting nothing for this. But you're doing all the work for these companies so that they can make money. So we still have the concept of the audience commodity working here. The big difference being attention can be quantified much more closely and specifically. And really the business of these companies is not to give you entertainment, which is really how social media has changed over the last 5 years. We moved from a communication system to an entertainment system, especially with the rise of TikTok. It's all about finding stuff now that entertains us rather than stuff that we communicate about. That's not the purpose. TikTok don't care if you're entertained. They don't care about you. You don't matter to them. What matters to them is how effectively they can analyze you and how that can be used to leverage you as a service or good to be sold to others. And so the best companies in the digital economy do this the best. That's the race. The effect of this commercial model is to capture extreme amounts of information that is made valuable to use by being sold. Using this information, an advertiser might hypothetically be able to target all the members of a peer group, just as they are forming their opinion about brands, habits, and so on. This is why it is incredibly important that children don't use applications like TikTok. Because children are more susceptible to these messages. And TikTok doesn't just analyze what children are doing, it also pushes material by what they think they should be doing. Manipulates the algorithm in order to influence children. Because children are far more easily influenced than adults. But when I say that with enjoyment, there are many, many adults who are also extremely influenced as well, and very easy to influence too. This is where things get really scary. Because we have a generation of young people, and I'm looking at them, who have grown up in the age of algorithmic profiling. And whereas you might believe that you have agency, actually, you don't have that much agency. Everything you are presented on platforms, which is your primary engagement with media, is platforms like Instagram, TikTok, etc. Don't believe me? Check your phone. See how much you use Instagram a week. See how much you use TikTok a week. believe me, that's what you do. And the length of time that you've been using these services also means that you have been subjected to this kind of influence over and over again to make you into more effective consumers. More effective consumers for the customers of Instagram. More effective consumers for the customers of TikTok. The whole purpose of the construction of your For You page is to make you into something. That data subject I talked about earlier. The data subject is a good little person who takes all these messages in and acts accordingly on them. So, it's just some further researchers that have commented upon this. As Christian Fuchs says, we are now the commodity. Under the conditions of use of the platform, we become a underclass of labourers whose work is dictated by and for the benefit of the platform that we use. As Kylie Jarrett, who I used to work with in Ireland, argues, the immaterial labour that is used by social media is akin to a form of unpaid domestic labour. We have all become the digital housewife, according to Kylie. It's a really nice analogy. We do loads of work and we don't get paid for it. And we're just expected to be okay with that. The whole idea that we live in a sharing economy, which is one of the terms that is put across by social media companies to make this seem nicer. We're all sharing together. We're not. What we're doing is producing profit for these companies. Why is this problematic? We can break it down into a very simple argument. Christian Fuchs does this for us in his book, Social Media: A Critical Introduction. So, Meta is a company controlled by private shareholders who own those platforms, primarily Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Those are the big three platforms that Meta, the company, use. Meta's users create data whenever they're online that refers to their profiles and online behavior. It is always linked back to the data profile they have. Meta as a company doesn't just rely on its applications, it seeds the World Wide Web with cookies to collect information about where you've been and what you do. And that all feeds into the profile that they develop about you. That data is then sold to Meta's advertising clients who are enabled to present targeted advertisements on users' profiles, who are able to know deep, granular information about you to target you very, very specifically. So, without us, the people who use those services, there is no profit. Everything about that company is contingent on us. Without us, they produce nothing. All the content on their platforms is produced by us. Can you imagine Instagram with no users? There's nothing there. It doesn't exist. See how perfect this is? They don't even have to make anything. They don't make any content. All the content is made by us. And then all that content that we make, we look at, and then it's sold back to us in terms of other content. It's a crazy system. Somebody said 25 years ago, we're going to make a whole shit ton of money, we're not going to make anything. Media companies said, what we're going to do, we're going to make this application, but we're not going to make any videos, we're not going to make any images, we're going to get everyone else to do that for us, and we're going to make loads of money doing it. They're looking like, what? You're crazy. It's never going to work. But it does work. Because we all contribute to it. But if we weren't there, this wouldn't work. We've seen this happen with social media companies in the past. The most famous of which being MySpace, which collapsed in 2008. Before 2008, MySpace was bigger than Facebook. It was bigger than Instagram, because Instagram didn't exist until 2010. It was bigger than Twitter, which came along in 2006. But MySpace completely collapsed in 2008 because all the users went to Facebook and Twitter and gave up on MySpace. There was no one left. So it just fell apart. There was no business model anymore. So, we create the monetary value and profit of Meta, but we don't own that profit. The shareholders do. The people who own shares in Meta, they own all the profit that we make. So basically, we are exploited for profit. Indeed, we are what we call double objects of commodification, because not only are we commodified as users, they then sell the customer stuff back to us. So not only are we exploited at one level, all our data is taken, then they have the audacity to use all that data to sell us things on the same platform. So we are doubly used at all times. Not great, right? Unless you're the person who comes up with this stuff. Then it's great. That guy Zuckerberg, guy's got a shit ton of money. I mean, he's weird and probably some kind of criminal. And he's probably got like the bodies of like people buried in his garden, I suspect. He's got that vibe. But he's got a shit ton of money. You know, and if that's what you value, shit tons of money, that's the guy you want to be like. But don't be weird like him, because he really puts me off. Because I don't mind weird, but that guy. Okay. Facebook is not an outlier in this. This is how Google do business. Every search you make using Google is stored, analysed. And this is when people get like, oh fuck, because that's what I've been searching for on Google. Google's search history of me as an individual is dark, disturbing, and quite possibly criminal. Well, let me modify that. Dark, disturbing, and criminal. There's no quite possibly about it. Some of the things I look for online, that's not good. Okay, I'm not going to get into it, but no. There are others in this room who have searched for some really, really weird shit on Google. Yeah, I can see people like that. I've done some weird shit. Google remembers. Google remembers every one of those things and adds it to your profile. You wonder maybe sometimes why you're getting advertised that thing? Just think about what you were looking for, and then it will answer some questions. So, Google's model of operation is constant, real-time, biopolitical exploitation. Basically what's argued here is that Google is a foundational part of a form of what we call biopower. Now, biopower is a really sophisticated term used by the French sociologist Michel Foucault. So biopower refers to the techniques used by states when Foucault was writing to subjugate subjects. What Foucault argued was that the state used particular techniques in order to make us do things. And he did that by disciplining our bodies, in Foucault's words. So, this is for Foucault subjugation. You are told to come to a particular building at a particular time every week in order to do a particular thing. And when you're there, you're going to sit in a particular position and listen to a particular set of things. This is all a disciplinary technique. The whole of education is a disciplinary technique. You turn up at this time, you do these things, you have no choice in what you're doing. This is where the weird thing with university is. You have more choice over the subjects you're studying. No, you don't. You don't have any choice over the subjects you study. We make the choices for you. You may be able to choose which ones of them you do, but you can't invent your own course or your own module, because you're told, no. You're not expert enough for that. Those people over there are the experts. They'll develop the course for you. You've been told that for the last 15 years. Everything that you've done to this point. You had no control over the stuff you were taught. You had no control over when you were taught it or by who. These are all techniques of discipline. And we call that overall technique biopower because it's power over bodies. We continually work to condition the human body and the human being in particular ways. And the net result of the education system is what? Why do we do all this? Why do we make you come at this time, to this place, with that stuff? What's the end goal here? What do we want? We even measure it in university. And it is in university too. We even get measured on this. Employability data is a vital metric of how universities are assessed. The whole purpose of all of this is to make you into good little employees who will turn up on time, do whatever crap you're told to do, and then go home afterwards, and not ask too many questions about it. And do you know why you'll do that? Because that's exactly what you will have done for 18 years beforehand. You would have turned up, sat, listened or not, can't control everything, right? Taken notes, done the test, shown your proficiency of that material, move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until we've ground out any form of individuality and any dissent against the system. That's biopower. Now, biopower is used just as much by Google and other organizations as well. You are conditioned to think, okay, I need to find out about this topic. How am I going to do it? How do you find out about something? Google it. It's even a verb now. The idea of Googling it is a verb. Google's a noun, but we turned it into a verb. We say, oh, I'm going to Google that. If I Googled it yesterday, I'm going to do past tense. I'll be Googling that later. Future tense. Google's vision of the world is that everything can be known. This isn't me making stuff up. This is in their mission statement. If you read Google's mission statement as a company, the top couple of lines will cover the idea that Google's mission is to make everything knowable. All things in the world can be known. And how can they be known? By using Google systems. The whole point of Google's system is to make everything available at all times. This is what we call technological solutionism, the idea that you can apply technology to something that will solve everyone's problems. As long as you apply enough technology in the right way, all the problems of the world will be solved. So one of the problems that we have in the world is that people don't know enough. People are ignorant. People make bad decisions because they don't know about these things. Well, Google is going to change that by making the whole world knowable to you at all times. This is fairly typical of how companies like Google think. Technological solutionism is rife, unfortunately, in the world. If you just apply the right technological solution, you are going to fix all of the world's problems. Now, in all honesty, you might think I'm overblowing this, but that is exactly what Google think they're doing. As a company, they actually believe they are solving all the world's problems. Breaking down barriers between people, breaking down conflict, making everything available so we never have to disagree on anything ever again. This is their actual mission aim as a company. This is called technological solutionism. That's a term from Yevgeny Morozov. Basically, they boil every social problem down to a problem that can be solved by technology itself. Spoiler alert, can't be done. Human beings are complicated. Technology doesn't solve our problems. Other human beings solve our problems. Being able to communicate as human beings solve our problems. Scott Galloway, when he's in his analysis of Google in particular, basically says that Google is casting itself as God. In the digital world, Google is God, because that's how it sees its own power. Power to know everything possible. As Galloway pictures it, Google knows that as we walk through the mall, we lust for a pair of Tory Burch Jolie pumps or Bose Quiet Comfort headphones. He knows, Google he as in God, knows that you have that thing for girls with tattoos, because he knows everything that you're into. You might think, why does Google do this? Why does Google want to know everything? The argument that Google put across as a company is the more that you know about everyone on the planet, the more predictable we all become. You can stop problems from happening if you know enough about people. You can stop that school shooter. You can stop that traffic accident. You can stop that fight down the pub. If you know enough about people, you can push people away from the bad things that they might do, and push other people away from those people in order to avoid bad things happening. All of society can be organised if we just know enough about everyone. And the only way we can know enough about everyone is by collecting every bit of information that we possibly can about people at all times, day and night, forever. If we do that, we will know enough about people so that we can stop the bad things happening in the world. And again, you might think, no way, this is not their aim. It's all in their mission statement. I am not making any of this up, it is all there in black and white. This is what they are aiming for as an organisation. This is the point of the lecture where I lose the will to live. Because even though I know all this stuff, it's so depressing and so fundamentally hurtful to me as a human being that I do lose the will to live here. So for the rest of the lecture, please just bear with me, because at this point, I've been doing variations of this lecture since 2008, and I hit the wall when I talk about Google. Because fundamentally, I think Meta are an awful, awful company. I think they're horrible. I think the way that they exploit users is dreadful. I think Amazon is a horrible, horrible company. I think the way they exploit users is terrible, and the way they exploit employees is even worse. Believe me, you're all in Swansea now. If you're ever tempted to take a part-time job in the Amazon warehouse, think really carefully about that. You've got to be desperate to work in that place. It's vile. Okay? Just a warning. And they don't pay that well either. If you're on your arse, I can understand it, but believe me, it's a difficult place to go. I think Apple are a horrendous company. I think Apple operate in such an underhand way, it's disgusting. I think Microsoft are a terrible organisation. But these are the worst. Because none of those other companies are aiming to know everything about you. They want to know enough to satisfy their customers. These guys want to change the world fundamentally, Google. And they want to change it into how they want it to be. That's the problem with people who have utopian visions. They think their vision is the best for everyone. That's why communism in the 20th century fails. You think, oh, that's the vision that everyone should have. Well, do you know what? We all have different opinions. We are different. Human beings are an incredibly diverse species. To have one thing for everyone is an incredibly bad thing. These guys are the modern day equivalent of totalitarian communists in the 20th century. The object of the harvesting of personal information is not an individualized tracking of the whole population. What I want you to get out of your head is this idea that there's somebody watching you. If you held that idea, get rid of it. There is no person watching you. Nobody is looking at you. Instead, what is actually happening is that Google and other companies are putting themselves into an indispensable position in your life, to the point to which you cannot get by without using them. That is much worse than having somebody watching you at all times. That's the old form of power. You know, you do what you're told, because if you don't do it, somebody is going to come around with a big stick and bitch slap you. That's the old power. The new power is these companies are completely indispensable to your everyday life and are ingratiated into every aspect of what you do. And you cannot get away from them. We cannot take this, sit down and walk off. You can't do it. Your life doesn't work without that. That's fundamentally the truth of modern existence. If you're not digitally enabled, you don't exist. You can't do anything. You can't communicate. You can't find your way around. How many of you would be comfortable when you arrived at Swansea getting around the city without Google Maps? You have a fucking clue. You might ask somebody of my age, how did you do it, Leighton? Well, do you know what happened? It used to get lost. That's what fucking happened. It's get lost all the time. And then you end up in really interesting places when you get lost, and you end up with really interesting people, and your life becomes really rich and fruitful because of it. Because you find randoms all over the place, and it's just a great time. We don't want that for you guys. We don't want you wandering off down an alleyway next to White Street with this smacker shooting up or anything like that, right? You want to be safe, and you want to... shit. So you open up that little application and you find the way to go. The safe way to go. You avoid all the excitement in life. Because the excitement in life actually isn't stuff you can hold in life. Instead, it's much better to push you the way, past H&M. Because then you can have a look at H&M and buy some shit. They've already profiled that, you like H&M. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you've recently gone here. And it knows. And also it knows how long you were there for. And of course, if you bought something, that information's also been sold. So, yeah. This is the cool thing, right? Has anyone in here got a really embarrassing, that's never a good way to start questions. Has anyone got a thing that they really like to have, which they think is quite embarrassing? Now, my thing, it's not that bad, all right? It's not terrible by any means. But I really like Molam sweets, okay? You might think, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. I'm 44 years old, okay? Fuck's sake, why am I going to grow up and stop eating Molam sweets? Okay? But when you put it in that context, you might think, eat some fruit or something. Has anyone got anything like that? Something that they buy and you think, it's a bit dodgy. It's not great. Does anyone like pot noodle, for example? See, we've always got one. Izzy likes pot noodle. Pot noodles are great. Pot noodles make me feel fundamentally dirty after eating them. I feel seedy. Do you know what I mean by that adjective, seedy? I feel like I've done something wrong. I look around and think, is anyone seeing me eating this thing? Because this is bad, this is the equivalent of, I don't know, walking out of a drug den or something. This is really, I'm strolling out of a crack house looking pleased with myself. These, especially the Bombay bad boy, that's the one where you really look at people and think it's the fucking guy. Right? That's the sort of guy that you don't want to sit next to on a flight. Now, what's cool about this system is that companies like Google know that I have an indecent relationship with pot noodle Bombay bad boy. Because when I wait for the shop in Fulton House to go quiet, so I can indulge my disgusting habits without people seeing me, that sales data is sold and matched up with the location data on my phone at that precise time. And when it's matched up enough times, which it has been over the years with the Bombay bad boy, thousands of times, Google knows that I have a problem when it comes to pot noodle consumption. Google knows, therefore, from that I have the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old boy. And Google can start marketing things on that basis to me, which is all scary shit. Google knows this about everything that you've got it. Google matches you up. And again, you might think, how does it do this? Because you told it could. Because when you installed Chrome on your phone, or the Google app on your phone, or Gmail on your phone, you ticked the box that said it was okay for them to do that. And you all did it. You're not reading all that shit. It's 40 pages this year. It's too long. Just tick the box and then get using it, right? Yeah, we've all done it, right? We've all installed Instagram. And we all tick the box that says Instagram owns every image and comment and word and message that we send on that application. They no longer belong to us. They are all copyright Instagram. Everything. We tick the box. we gave them permission. It's right in there, page 24 out of 147 of the terms and conditions. Right there. Why didn't you read it? You don't read it. We just don't do it, right? Now, all of this contributes to what we call a cybernetic governmentality. It's a very complicated phrase, but it's actually really simple idea. We are governed by this data system. Things that we do, the things that we produce, where we're pushed towards, the decisions that we make are all a product of this all-encompassing data system. There's been a lot of phrases to use to describe this system over the years. I forget the guy's first name now, but Carr in 2008 called it a glass cage, which I think is a really elegant way of putting it. We don't see the bars, but they're there. We are encaged in this system, but we can't even see the walls around us. Everything we do creates a trail of breadcrumbs, a data trail, which is sold to advertisers as an unavoidable consequence of engagement with the platform itself. And this is how businesses make money. And we can inform ourselves about all of this, which is what we're doing right now. And there's nothing we can do about it. And that's why it's so, so dangerous. Doesn't matter how much you know about it, you can't do anything about it. You can take small steps. You can use a different search engine, for example. You can use DuckDuckGo as a search engine. They don't collect your data. Guess what? The search sucks. You go back to Google within a week, I guarantee it, because you want the good results. You don't want the good results that DuckDuckGo gives you. You can use the Tor internet browser, which runs an onion system. But guess what? And we get the nod in it. Why don't we use it? It's shit, man. It's slow as fuck. It takes forever to do anything. Terrible, right? Dreadful. But if you want to buy drugs and guns, well, that's what I advise you use, okay? That privacy is brutal. But only if you want to buy those things. Otherwise, use. We can do things, but we can't do anything about it. We are powerless. So this is why I get depressed. So we are basically digital oil. All of us. Every one of us. At least we can take solace from the fact, my friends, that we are all the same. We are not privileged amongst one another. We are all treated equally in this system, equally as peasants in the system of digital oil. I'm going to skip a couple of things here because basically repeating points that I've already made. The system as it exists today is a system in which we are trapped in a loop of what is called unending consumption. Now, there are two perfections of this, okay? One of them is TikTok, and the other one is Spotify. How many TikTok users do we have? I find it fundamentally unbelievable that anyone does not use TikTok, to be quite honest. TikTok is the crack cocaine of the digital era, and I am a crackhead of TikTok. It is frightening how much shit I watch on TikTok every day. Yesterday I logged a beautiful 6 hours on TikTok, and yesterday was my fucking birthday. I spent the day with friends and family celebrating, and I still did 6 hours, and I talked for 3 hours. How did I do 6 hours on TikTok? That is frightening stuff. I was up at 6 yesterday morning watching TikTok for an hour and forgetting to eat my Frosties. My Frosties sat there for an hour in a bowl while I was watching TikTok. They were all mushy. I kind of like them like that. But, you know. Can we finish TikTok? It goes on forever. Why does it go on forever? Why is it never ending? Pardon?
Sorry, it keeps us wanting to come back.
One, it keeps us wanting to come back. Listen. A new material, right? There's always something new. always a new thing on TikTok. It's, although a lot of the time we're just seeing the same fucking trend over and over again, but there is always new stuff coming all the time. It's unending. And we're trapped in a loop. We don't want to miss anything. So we just sit and watch and watch and watch and watch. The reason why I identify Spotify as the other one is because Spotify can't be listened to. You can't listen to all of Spotify. You can't listen to all of the music on Spotify because actually the amount of material on Spotify is longer than the human lifespan. If you started listening to Spotify from the moment you were born and reasonably lived, let's say to 100 years old, you wouldn't have covered a tenth of the material on Spotify during that time. You would have done nothing else in the entirety of your life. You cannot get to it. You can apply this to YouTube, you can apply this to Twitter content, you can apply it to Instagram. You cannot exhaust these resources. Human life is finite, you don't have the time to finish this stuff. The result of having all of this is that we're in a constant relationship between cultural consumption, production, representation, identity, and regulation, and we don't think about it. Because all we're doing is consuming. But we're constantly being modulated and regulated on the basis of what we are doing. This is a new phase of capitalism called unending consumption. Capitalism in the past operated on a very simple premise that actually people would buy something and consume it, and then that would stop, and they would have to buy something else. Even if you bought something like television, within a few years the television would fail, and you would have to go and buy a new one. Or there'd be new trends in technology, and you would want to replace it with a better one. We're not in that anymore. Now, we start doing something and it just goes on and on and on. And we are constantly in that system. Has anyone in this room tried to give up TikTok? How successful have we been, people? It's not done, right? But it's pointless, my argument would be. Getting rid of this stuff is absolutely pointless because the minute you stop using that, you are out of the fucking loop. You stop being able to communicate with people in the same way because you don't have that point of similarity with them. You know? It's so ingrained into our culture that if you pull yourself out of that system, all of a sudden you're like an alien in the culture. So you have to be attuned to it. It's like, the argument always comes up, especially in my second year module, is, well, social media is so bad, why don't we just delete it? That's the same argument as saying, well, if cars are so bad, why don't we get rid of the roads? Well, let me tell you why we don't get rid of the roads. Because society would break down within 10 minutes if that happened. And we would enter a barbaric state of nature where I would be running around looking like something out of Mad Max, brutally beating people to death and feasting on the gooey insides of their brain. In 10 minutes. That's how fundamentally quick and how ready I am for the breakdown of society. It is society. This is what society is. You can't delete society. You have nothing. We are in unending consumption. The way we describe all of this is very succinctly put by an American theorist, Shoshana Zuboff. In 2019, Shoshana Zuboff did one thing which was really smart and gave a title to that thing that we were all thinking for a very long time. It kind of pisses you off when you're a media theorist and somebody comes up with an idea that sums it all up, but it wasn't you, because you've been teaching it for years, and like most other people as well. But Shoshana Zuboff was able to come up with a term that sums it up really nicely. Shoshana Zuboff says we live in the age of surveillance capitalism. The capitalist system we live in today is not the Marxist capitalist system that we talked about last week. Our capitalist system is a surveillance capitalism. Capitalism works today by spying on us at all times. This is fundamentally how it operates. There is an underlying surveillance logic in everything, and it infiltrates every part of our lives. Until 5 years ago, we didn't have those things. Why do we have them? These swipe things to say while you're here. To monitor attendance, exactly. Why do we need to do that? You're an adult. It's none of my business whether you come or not. It really isn't. You are all in this room adults. You make your own decisions. It's your life. You do what you want with it. It's one of the few freedoms we have. The university has been told that it needs to have this information. Why is it being told that? Because the government has set up a new series of regulations for university performance, and that is one of the metrics in it. The idea of surveillance capitalism isn't just something which occurs in companies like Google and Facebook. It occurs everywhere. That's why it's become a structural part of society. Everyone follows the logic of it. We track people all times. Everyone swipes in. You won't have a job where you don't swipe in. That won't exist. When you get out of here, any job that you do, you will be asked swipe in, swipe out. It might be automatic. Who knows? You might be tattooed with a barcode or something. Sweet. Free tattoo. This has been thought about. Not by Swansea University. You will have been tattooed first year, so that's great. But I'm sure some idiot in the senior management team has thought of this. Not a really good idea, because any shit idea they jump on. Yeah. I saw this, yeah, some guy had his Tesco Club card barcode tattooed on his arm, so he could just show it to the card reader. Yeah, this guy saw that in the paper, yeah. I've also seen people who had QR codes tattooed on their wrists, and if you scan them, it takes them to it'll take you to their link tree, so you can go to their socials from it. So they're like that. So instead of, like, you know, when you've got somebody in a pub and you ask for the socials, they just go like that. Yeah, well, Amazon tried this in Scandinavia, where they tried putting chips in people. In the top of your finger, a tiny little microchip in the top of your index finger. It doesn't hurt or anything like that. If anyone in here has had the contraceptive thing, it's a similar thing, but it's obviously much smaller, right? But it works on kind of the same principle in many ways. But instead of having like a constant supply of hormones, you have a little, basically RFID chip like this. And Amazon workers just pressed against the metal pad and be ready. But it's no different from this, which, by the way, I believe is coming to the university next year. Fingerprinting, yeah. Which means you're going to have to give permission for that. Please resist. Don't let the university have your fingerprints. Okay? They have your money already. Don't give them any more than that. Okay, so, very important that we understand what Zuboff does here. Shoshana Zuboff pulls all this together. She said the fundamental mode of capitalism in the 21st century is surveillance. It's knowing as much about people as you possibly can. I know I've gone over a little, so there's a little bit, you know. I want you to go back to this question. Why Swansea University? Because this will pull everything together. So give me some reasons, people. Why are you here? Clearing. Okay, interesting. I'll come back to that.
Near the beach.
Near the beach. Interesting. I'll go back to that. Georgia. You were recommended by whom? People who already studied here. We have a trail of stuff going on. Better than Birmingham. Not the greatest endorsement I've ever heard. Backup option. You need a better backup option. Is he? It's near where you live. Can't think of a worse reason to come here. Yeah. Couldn't get into Cardiff. Welcome to Swansea. Do you know half of our staff have that answer as well? Okay. Now, here's my point to end this lecture. None of you have answered the question correctly. I know this already. You think you came here because you decided to. You didn't. You were all pushed here. Swansea University has been collecting data on you for the past 6 to 7 years. Swansea University has not been advertising directly to you during that time, but it has been involved in a very sophisticated marketing campaign that has been doing nudges towards you. For example, Alyssa, over the past 6 to 7 years, has been targeted with all sorts of things about beaches on Instagram, haven't you? And when, all of a sudden, when you're 18 and you're able to make a decision, what's the first thing Swansea says about the university? It's next to the fucking beach. Swansea University has been trawling social media platforms and all these data aggregators to find potential students who like beaches, because that's an individual selling point of this institution. You think your clearing choices were your own, but actually, we knew about you. George's friends didn't make their decisions. George's friends were subject to the same kind of thing. You have all been subject to a sophisticated program of data manipulation for many, many years. Don't care. None of you care. Of course you don't. But that's how it works. So, I wanted to go to Cardiff. It's funny that Swansea was trailing behind them, wasn't it? Because that's one of the things we do as an institution. We collect data on who's applying at Cardiff University and target them in case they don't get in. Because they look at it and think, ah, well, Swansea's just down the road from Cardiff. It's close enough, you know. It's alright, don't worry. Hey. They don't want that. Okay, I'll see you all. I won't see you next week, but I'll see you in 2 weeks, yeah? Question. Okay. So I know I'm running late.
I advise that.